Welcome to the Festival of Entrepreneurs, recorded live at the NEC in Birmingham. Over the next few minutes, you'll hear from some of the most incredible founders, investors, and business leaders who joined us this year.
Thank you for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. My name is Luke Christopheridis. I work for Barclays Innovation Banking, and I lead our AI and software industries. We've got a really exciting panel discussion for you today. We're going to be talking about how AI is reshaping the startup journey. We've got some great panelists joining us as well with some excellent domain expertise. So we have Sadeeq Akintola from DeepMind Google Cloud. Sadeeq is a data analyst for the public sector. He also provides mentorship on the Google for Startups program, and he does the same for UK accelerators like VC, and has 15 years of experience doing so. We've got James Ferebee, the co-founder of Digital Planning, which is a digital agency supporting SMEs with their own digital transformation projects. But James and the digital planning team have also built an AI platform recently called Metis. And then we have Roei Samuel on the end, CEO and founder of Connected. Roei is a serial entrepreneur, so a glutton for punishment. Exited his first startup at what age? 25 years old, for a multi-million-pound deal, and then became a serial angel investor, and as well as founding Connected. What age was that, Roei? I was 28. 28, so cramming it all in before 30. Well done. Connected is a great platform at getting founders and startups connected with NEDs and investors. So interesting perspectives across the panel, both from an advisory perspective but also from an operator perspective, so hoping to bring sort of different views to the topic. So I'll take a seat. Sadeeq, I'm going to start with you if that's okay. There's lots of discussion around what AI is and how it's transforming things, how it's changing things. In your opinion, what would be the most striking changes you've seen and the sort of opportunities and use cases? Is it in customer experiences? Is it in efficiencies? Is it in writing more code? Where are the big opportunities for SMEs?
I would say definitely all of the above. And there's a much more larger context to it. One thing I see, especially with AI, with a lot of our customers and maybe some of the startups that I mentor, is the fact that they want to do so many things, but they don't have the resources to be able to do those things and do them quickly. So in terms of resource optimization, and I know a lot of people are familiar with vibe coding now, right? There's a lot of vibe coding exercises around where you're able to build a product from ground up in a couple of minutes or hours, things that could have actually taken you some bit of days and weeks to build a prototype. And I think for a lot of startup companies, building that prototype, especially tech startups, building that prototype is something that is really, really important. So in terms of productivity, the fact that all these AI are there to be like your assistant and then help you to, one, improve your code, because there's a lot of garbage in, garbage out that goes into codes. Now you're able to have a tailored experience, writing really efficient code and be able to tailor it to exactly the products that you want to build. Two is the fact that sometimes you don't have the resources to actually build at all. So the fact that things that will take 20 team members, and now you can kind of vibe code your way into developing the solutions for that MVP is really, really great. The other thing is, securing your applications. We've seen a lot of developers that normally, ideally, they would develop their applications, but without having the right framework in developing securely. Now with AI, and I'll give an example, people who use our platform like Gemini Code Assist, they're seeing about 26 up to like some 50% productivity in terms of how they build and build faster, the kind of code generation that gives to them, because there are sometimes you generate codes, but then the time that you take to debug those codes that are also generated is actually much more. So in terms of productivity, in terms of efficiency, we've seen a lot of this come into play where developers are able to build product faster, more efficient, and more securely.
Interesting, thank you, Sadeeq. So sort of a description there of democratizing access to scale for SMEs in a way.
Absolutely.
We've never seen.
Absolutely. A key example to that is the fact that there are a lot of things that you might want to do in terms of deploying AI to your applications. And I'm talking mostly about startups that are building tech products, but they don't have the resources to hire data engineers, data scientists, and every other persona across the spectrum. Now, when you have a platform that gives you, where you can actually do these things and do them with several prompts to arrive from start to finish, for example, leveraging things like AI generation, helping you to build a model that you can easily deploy into your products in less than minutes, then that is, I think, efficiency. So we have a lot of products leveraging that on our platform.
Thank you, Sadeeq. Sometimes AI can be described, negatively as a zero-sum game. But I think that, the picture you're painting there is that it can be an opportunity to do more. If you're small, you can now think big, and you can also think fast. Roei, as a founder of a company, sort of on the front end of this transformation, how does what Sadeeq sort of says resonate with you? And culturally, sort of what side of the fence are you on? Are you seeing this as an opportunity to bring people together, to push teams faster, or how are you framing it at Connected?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And first of all, I'll just say before I answer the question, I saw Luke about probably 18 months ago doing a talk we were at Oxford University, basically breaking down what was going on in the world of AI and where things were heading. I just want to tell you, this guy was 100% right. So if anyone wants to see where things are heading, you should definitely have a conversation with Luke and break his brain.
Roei, that was unplanned.
Big time, it's true, I had to tell you. Waiting for 18 months to tell you that. I think we're seeing a lot of changes through AI, of course, and I think a lot of it is behavioural change at the end of the day. To your point, Sadeeq, I think sometimes you can see founders, early stage teams hide behind perfection. It's going to take us a while to build something, it's going to take us a while to put things out there. With AI, you don't have that excuse anymore, and that actually forces people to go quicker, put things in market, get that feedback, so I think it's been really positive. And what I say to my teams is, there are a lot of cultural nuances around AI. There is psychological safety for the workforce. Every single week you're hearing new headlines, whether it's Salesforce, Microsoft, DBS, all talking about automation. So I think as leaders and founders and employers, we have to be really sensitive and responsible with how we talk about the usage of AI. But what I say to my teams is if you're not using AI in your workflows, in the way that you're building or executing, to me it shows two things. Either complacency or lack of curiosity. Neither of those things are good trait. Neither of those things are good for anyone who's building or an early stage team. So we've got to be sensitive, we've got to be sensible, we have to empower our teams. But Connected fundamentally is a human first business. We called it Connected because we believe actually in this age of technological revolution and advance, people risk being disconnected, and the cultural element of this type of innovation giving that sense of isolation or insecurity. So we're really, really cognizant with how we bring it in. We use it to help empower our teams, to help them make their work quicker. At the end of the day, I think the 9 to 5 was a model built by Henry Ford when we were still working on supply chain. So if people can use AI to be more efficient, to get things done more quickly, then I think that's a really positive thing. You have to empower them in that way and help them drive towards output rather than how many hours are you doing, to help them see it's okay.
And was there a sort of significant event or cultural turning point? Like, does the penny drop within a team around AI? Is it like a product you built, an internal efficiency, or sort of customer thing? What was the sort of turning moment for the team?
I don't think there's been a single isolated moment where the penny dropped in that way. But over the last, over the first 6 months of AI becoming more widely adopted, there were just so many quick wins and getting speed, and obviously with Connected, we're using machine learning and AI to help bring people together in a more effective way. And I think seeing the impact on customer outcomes has been the awesome thing. It's like now we're onboarding people, they're getting served, they're getting what they need 10 times quicker than we could have done pre-implementing that type of technology. And at the end of the day, when you're running a purpose-driven company, seeing that impact of customer outcome, I think is what really brings it all together.
Interesting. Thanks, Roei. And James, from sort of digital planning's perspective and view of the world, is there anything to add from your work that you're leading with your customers and the projects that you're taking on? Does that feel the same, or is there anything different about what's been said so far?
What was the original question?
The two questions, I suppose. One was, what are the big sort of striking changes that AI is bringing about? So is it customer products, is it customer experiences, or is it internal efficiencies?
Both.
Okay. And then the latter was around the sort of culture of the team. So is it, are people wary of AI, or is it an opportunity to do more and do more things faster?
I'd certainly echo what Roy said there, in that if you're not doing it, there's going to be a very good reason for that. I think culturally, the number one rule, the number one tenet of digital planning is get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that can be said for any startup. But I think particularly with AI, the gains compound, and you need to start now, start small, get buy-in from your team, and that's going to set the groundwork for everything else. You get return on investment, you get those first small changes, you see the impact that it has, then you can start to take on bigger transformation within your business and for your customers as well.
Start being the key word in your answer there. Follow-up question: if you're an SME and you've yet to engage with AI, where do you start?
Is there a single person in this room that's not used ChatGPT yet? No. Okay, so
Just one.
Just one. Okay. So if you were going to start anywhere, start there, play, have fun with it. I think we have to remember that AI, LLMs, large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is that you use, they're only one area of AI. So when you say where do you start, it depends what your business is. And I think it's very important that you try and remain solutions led. So really think about what it is that you want to do, because you can use clever tools to speed up your workflow. You can start planning things and make big cultural sweeping changes, but if you've not got a clear idea of what it is that you want to do, you're not going to have return on investment, and you're not going to find it effective. I think it's really important to be really clear on that before you start. We make a big deal at Digital Planning about being platform agnostic, so it doesn't really matter, I hope you forgive me, whether we use Microsoft, whether we use Google, or any of those kind of infrastructures. They are tools, they are infrastructure that really should be in response to a need for your company. So very first thing, I'd sit down with a pen and paper and a cup of tea and say, what do I need to achieve in my business to move it forward? And I'd work backwards from there.
Excellent, thank you. There's a mantra in design, and as the agency guy, I'll share it, which is fall in love with the problem, and not the solution. Which sounds like a free approach as well. There's no cost to sitting down with a cup of tea and a post-it note and thinking about your problems, but also the right way to work backwards. And once you you start circling the sinkhole on a problem, is it buy some access to some models? Is it sort of pick up the phone to someone like yourself? Is it buy some hardware? What are the sort of starting points for moving on from problem to right? We need to sort of.
I'll tell you how I would approach it as a founder, and it used to be Google it. I still do Google it. I think anybody in here who's an entrepreneur who started a business Googles it. And then I would also chat GPT, and I would have a conversation. I'd have a conversation with 2 or 3 different models, and I would say, where would I go from here? Let's actually practice what we preach. I've got a startup. I've got to solve this problem. Let's access all of humankind's knowledge and try and leverage that to give me a better answer. What are going to be the next steps? But yeah, sure, I phone up a shop that sells me widgets. It's going to sell me widgets. It comes back to you really need to know what it is that you want to do, and then reach out to whatever the provider is. There's many ways to skin a cat.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, is to know what you want before you start looking.
Excellent, thanks James. And Roy.
Yeah, I mean, I just adding on from that, when we talk about starting point, because I think it's really useful for any entrepreneurs or operators to keep this in mind, which is data hygiene has never been more important than it is now. Because if the inputs aren't quality, and if that's a mess, then you're not going to be able to build on that in a reliable way. So if you're starting now, data hygiene. I know it's a really sexy, fun topic, but genuinely data hygiene will just rapidly impact the pace at which you're able to adopt and implement these solutions, and whether you'll be able to do it yourself or need to have a more sort of service-led approach to getting you in the shape to implement.
Excellent, which is a great time to bring in maybe someone with Sadeeq's knowledge. So Sadeeq, if you were in the room, so just a show of hands, similar to a good thing you did earlier, James, who is sort of playing with AI within their company at the moment? And is anyone fine-tuning an AI model? Okay, interesting. So Sadeeq, if you were going to start layering and building on AI, to Roy's point, what tips and advice would you have for the room on how to approach that from a data perspective?
Okay, from a data perspective, I think a lot of organizations kind of get things wrong because they start from the middle. And it doesn't really start from building the model itself. There's a whole lot of things that have to kind of happen before that. Number one is, the end goal is to have a secure, scalable, well-governed, unified data. But what you see with a lot of organizations, and startup included, in fact, actually, I think it's a lot more complex with startups because their data is messy, the data is not really available, and then they don't have the full context of how much data they need to acquire. And that's why I agree with Roei, where the data culture needs to be very well set up. But it doesn't stop there. I think it starts with the infrastructure. You need to have an infrastructure that allows you to be able to, one, collect reasonable data and make sure you have this data in a well-structured environment. And then two, it's still not the data itself, or it's not the model itself. This is where the platform comes into place. So one is the infrastructure, and what I mean by infrastructure is we have startups that they really want to do great things. They want to have branches across the whole of the UK. But then, if you look at where the data is stored, it's probably stored on a laptop, which sits down in their living room. So if you want to scale, you definitely would need to move out of that environment into an environment that allows you to kind of build and scale. The other thing is the platform, and this is where, the data platform that you're using, where is it? What does it allow you to do? What foundation does it give you to build on? And then the next thing is your data. So what kind of data are you collecting from your customers that allows you to do a lot of machine learning? Because if we look at it, the blood of any machine learning model is not how fancy or what company it's from. It's actually from the data that you've been able to collect, curate, and then fine-tune in a way that allows you to do a predictive, a right model. And then there comes the model itself. So I think you have to kind of cross those three stages, before you get to actually building the AI and then leveraging them. And I know that we use a lot of tools. I think it's better to kind of find a way to kind of go into all the tools that you use, centralize them, get the data, and then be able to build a reasonable model once that data is connected.
Thank you, Sadeeq. And could you give, do you have an example startup you've mentored or aware of who have done that fine-tuning particularly well?
Oh yeah, so there was a startup that I was mentioning in Zinc VC. So Zinc VC is a startup accelerator here in London. They're trying to, and they solve health problems majorly, but they also venture into different kind of categories. So there was a founder that was trying to solve a problem around healthcare with cancer patients, and what they're trying to solve needs a whole lot of data. And one of the things that we try to limit the scope of that environment into is if you can work with a research university that allows you to kind of capture a decent amount of data, but the data is coming from a true source, and then you're leveraging a platform that allows you to kind of, because health data is not sexy data, you have to do a lot of cleaning, so it has a lot of JSON files, kind of different formats. If you have a platform that allows you to, the moment you get the data, clean the data and feed that data straight into a Vertex AI model, you've cut short like 80% of the job by just feeding it into a platform that allows you to do that straight away from the source of that data. So and I worked with them for about 6 months, where they're able to get through the incubator. I don't know where they are right now, but I think that process kind of helps them to get to that MVP process as quickly as possible.
Excellent, thank you. And Roei, you're building, at Connected, you're building AI tools. In terms of AI skills and the people at Connected who are building those tools, I know that's a headache for founders. How are you approaching sort of all of the things that Sadeeq has just sort of painted for us, and what dev tools are they using, what models do they want to use, what sort of features, functionality are you putting in their hands? How are you approaching sort of getting the right skills to your developers and the right tools, function and functionality for Connected?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting question. I think for me, I'm blessed with an amazing CTO who is one of the most tech-curious people I've ever met in my life. And I think for him, who's making most of those decisions, I'm just the beautiful face of the company at this point, of course, who's making most of those decisions, has been someone who is continuously experimenting. He also made a big investment into the company as well, which I think is a really, really useful thing to have in a technology lead, because a lot of the technologists I'm working with now, maybe some of them are more excited about using new technologies and experimenting with that rather than actually what's the best thing for business. Because it's like when something new comes along, we like to use it. So really blessed to have the right technical lead around me on that front, who's making the majority of those decisions in truth.
I think it's really, can't overstate how every founder I talk to, every company I talk to, any sort of sessions with the Google team, the Microsofts and the other cloud service providers, it's like, this is really like, no one has the answers. Experimentation is really the sort of the key thing. There's new research turning up all the time. This is sort of a new technology in that it's research-led. Most others, like sort of a nuance and novelty to AI and Gen AI in itself. So, the assumption that, hey, like that company obviously has it figured out doesn't seem to be true. I've never met a company that has it figured out. It is a strong sort of like, well, let's try those tools. Let's see if they work. Let's experiment with that. Let's read that research paper and see whether we can cobble something together that works. If it doesn't work, that's fine. If it does work, then you can iterate and build from there. But it's kind of like you use the word exploratory.
Yeah,
that's my experience.
100%. And I think when Lovable initially came out, and maybe that first wave of vibe coding, people were immediately obsessed. Like, yes, this is it. And then they found ceiling quite quickly. And then took a step back. And now it's like, okay, great. Now that they've evolved, it becomes more scalable. So I think it's trying to get that balance between using that experimentative methodology for bringing in new ways of working and new tools that are out there with, okay, but actually, how much risk are we giving to that experimentation where there are a lot of unknowns still? So I think it evolves over time, and especially when you're a really fast-growing startup, it's difficult to make those engineering decisions. When it comes to prototyping, if you're at the very, very early stage, it's an absolute godsend.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Roei. So, who in the room, I'm going to do another room survey, who in the room is either got VC backing, sort of investment, institutional investment, or plans to raise in the future? So does that mean everyone else is bootstrapping? Interesting.
I love that.
Yeah. So, it's really interesting, thank you. So I've got a question, Roei, as an investor yourself. So as a sort of founder yourself, investor yourself, when you're approaching startups, founders, and sort of looking at pitch decks, how important is there's a sort of phenomenon at the moment called cargo culture, which is, everyone's rushing to put AI in their pitch deck. Everyone's sort of rushed, like AI washing is now a thing where sort of they're saying, hey, that's AI enabled, and the reality is it's not. They've just added AI to the thing. How important is the AI side for you when you're sort of as an investor? But also, more importantly, if you're not seeing the right sort of AI culture, what signal is that sending to you as an investor?
You'll like this. I recently got a deck for AI-enabled pet food. So I didn't think I was going to see it. We talk about the AI washing culture. There you go. So I think founders need to be hyper-realistic about where they sit within the world of AI. I made an investment into a company recently who pretty much got wiped out yesterday by the latest OpenAI update. because they were building something around agentic AI, which now is just going to be out of the box from ChatGPT. So I think people have to be realistic about where they sit within that. And unless you have got genuinely cutting edge technology and technologists within the team, unless you're building something which genuinely has that deep moat, if you're trying to replicate what is likely on OpenAI's roadmap, I don't think that's a good bet. And especially in the UK where we don't have that type of funding scene. The companies that I'm backing right now, who I think are doing really well, are saying, okay, we know that this revolution is happening, we know that that AI race is going to be won, so let's build for that future. Rather than trying to shape that future and say, well, we're going to build some of the rails, we're going to build some of that core technology, what does the world look like when that AI implementation, when that adoption, when that take-up is there? If that is true, regardless of who enables it, what can we build for that world? And I'd say that's where I'm seeing, most teams have success, unless, as I said, they are genuinely building like actually revolutionary technology, which is hard to come on.
Yeah, super fascinating. Thank you, Roei. And then James, there's a lot of bootstrappers in the room. You've built Lettuce. You're wrestling now with the sort of bootstrap or invest. Is there sort of anything you can share for the audience from a sort of building an AI product, wrestling with that internal dilemma that might be helpful?
I think it's interesting what you were saying about if you're going to build a deep technical moat. So we partnered with some universities. We're also partnered with the Royal Society for research. We've employed AI, ML engineers. We have a very, very deep technical moat. We're very comfortable that we've built something that's very difficult to reproduce. Not impossible. I think if we were to take investment, we would want to take investment from somebody that's got a much longer term view, kind of 5 to 10 years. DP or digital planning is what we like to refer to as our unicorn stables. We have those specialists, we have those technologists, those people that are at the leading edge, and we like to realise solutions and output them. Or we like to put our arms around somebody that hasn't necessarily got that and help them to realise their dreams. So when you talk about investment, do you mean investment in digital planning, or do you mean investment in some of the solutions that we're providing?
The solutions.
The solutions that we're providing. I guess it's just general founder advice. I think at some point you will want to de-risk. We've made our own investments, we continue to, and the weight of all that risk, because without significant financial backing, becomes too much. And also I think it's also about momentum and speed to market, because OpenAI could in 5 years change something that we've done. So why not set out to them in 3 years? If it's easier for them to just come along and buy us, then to us that's also a massively successful. We don't need to control the world, and I think it's important to have an idea of where you want to be, where you want to exit.
Yeah.
So that's our outlook on investment.
No, thank you. It's really, I think it's helpful for the room. From what I've read about the sort of VC world trends at the moment, the sort of big problem that they're wrestling with is that AI is disrupting VC. The sort of traditional SaaS model of VC, the money is used for engineers.
When we've spoken to investors recently, what they're interested in, as you say, where are we going to be? But people also need help along the way implementing what we have. So if you have that expertise in-house, we become very valuable to business. We have a good offering because it's like, can you help us do that? And that is what we do.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. And Luke, your point is right. The moat used to be, or the edge used to be venture dollars, right? Because you needed that. Now the edge is who owns the attention.
Yeah.
So if I was building for something which, because again, with the way that things are evolving, the moat that you have around your technology is the lowest it's ever been, unless you're building like quantum computing, synthetic biology, something at that level. So actually owning distribution, owning channels to market, like that's really what entrepreneurs should be building for right now.
Yeah, sorry, go on, James.
I'll also do one more time and say that you mentioned it earlier, secure, scalable solutions, right?
Yeah.
So to us, things like ISO badges, showing that we can work in a with really good cybersecurity, with good data hygiene, is very important, because we might well get founders come to us with a lovable coded idea, and they're 99% there. But that 1% is everything. It's how do you do it in a robust, secure, scalable way.
No, absolutely, and it's, you know, like, not something you figure out in 5 minutes, but historically, as you say, there's sort of like bootstrapping was kind of like, how well, if you want scale and if you want to be the winner of this market, you need that money. Now the valuations are harder, because it's like, well, I need to give you all this money, and founders are saying, I don't need all that money, and there's, so it's like, well, then your valuation's going to change, but it isn't, to your point, because you've got totally new modes. That's playing out in real time. So it's like, do we bootstrap? Do we get investment? It's a whole new dilemma in a new way.
100%. And without getting too off topic with this, I think you're going to have to see VCs totally changing their model to write smaller checks. Because right now they have to deploy a lot, and I think like almost like a microfinancing competitor to VC is going to be very, very interesting, and you'll see a lot of fund managers start operating in that space, because you don't need what you'll get for 25 million, you could do with 5 million.
Yeah, it's changing. So I think we've got time for some questions from the audience, if we have them. There's a hand immediately here. I'll give you my microphone.
Okay.
Introduce yourself and then ask away.
Okay, I'm Mark, founder of Jetpack, and I think the gentleman spoke about spoke about building an environment to scale data outside of AI companies. Their product is an AI product. From an operational perspective, let's say it's where we manufacture it. How do you build to scale in that scenario? Do you start out as a digital native startup? Is that, and which environments are better to scale your data? So are you talking about a cloud service, AWS, or Azure, for example?
Did you catch that, Sadeeq?
Yes, I'll try as much as possible not to be biased here, because I'm not here to sell my company.
That's the answer.
But the idea is, number one, I totally understand where that question is coming from, and I would say that as a startup, if you're manufacturing something, there is a level to which you've gotten in terms of your finances, and that would determine how much you're able to build that solution that really needs to work for your company. At the starting stage, you may be very well okay with having like a server to kind of get in your videos, get in your pictures, building an edge AI. An edge AI are like AI that you build that kind of really live on your devices and doesn't really need to talk to the cloud and things like that. Now, you may be fine with that at the starting stage of your operation. So you're doing like maybe 10 cars, 10 manufacturing products in a day, in a week. Maybe that's still fine. But the moment you start getting into, now we've got branches. Branch A needs to talk to branch B. We need to share data across all these different branches. Now we're moving outside of the UK. We want to probably have an office in Ireland. They're doing exactly the same thing that we're doing. You're never going to live on that internal server that you're storing your files. This is where you start leveraging the cloud solutions. And you may start small. Actually, you may not even talk to Google, AWS, and Azure. There might be some like cloud solutions that only deal with storage. If you think OneDrive, exactly. If you think storage is like the most important thing to your business, if you're able to solve that storage problem with a solution that does that and does that efficiently, you may be fine at that time, because I'm also thinking about your finances and how much you're able to manage that. But at some point, that is not going to work for your business anymore. This is where you need to start thinking about how do you leverage a platform. Now, everything I've mentioned, you can also do that on a cloud solution environment, because working, and again, I don't want to sell Google Cloud, but working with a cloud provider like Google Cloud, you're able to pay only for what you use. And I think that's really important for businesses. You only pay for what you use. You need storage, get that storage, use it, and only pay for that. You need AI models, you need AI model gardens where you already have pre-built AI. All you need to do is bring in your images, bring in your videos, leverage the pre-built AI. Nobody works at Google scale in terms of individual. So why don't you kind of leverage what is already available? Don't reinvent the wheel, just leverage the wheel that is already invented and then customize it to your use cases. So thinking about that, in that, having that kind of thinking with a business that you're building from ground up, I think helps a lot of businesses. And that's why we recognize that. And that's why we do Google for Startup Accelerator, where we give credits to founders that I really want to leverage Google Cloud for building their solutions. We give them credits. We also make engineers available to them, just so that if they're building, they have someone to kind of handhold them, get them through the process and make them comfortable leveraging the best-in-class technology, focusing on building their own products, not the resources that Google already provide. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think
there's a coffee chat afterwards if you need a new CSP. I'm just going to check. Have we got time for another more questions with the hosts? No one's here telling us off, so if you guys want to stay and our speakers don't mind staying, we'll take some more questions. So, Keith.
Thank you so much. I felt your poll made me stand out on ChatGPT. I'll find my question. 2 questions, 2 areas. Even though I'll use AI tools for other specific purposes, I do have concerns. Reservation, not complacent. You mentioned about ChatGPT. I'm aware that unless you're using the premium account, I'm aware that any search is not effective. So how can you encourage people to use this platform when it could be a barren and objective? And secondly is creativity. As a person with a creative background, I've listened to many creative professionals and it has been not very encouraged. As it's seen as being dependent on the AI creative tool is a risk being in legal trouble because there's theft and copyright material.
Thank you, Keith. So I suppose that's 2 questions. One, reliability and hallucinating, and then second was opening yourself up to new risks from AI, so some of the sort of cases around property and IP and litigation. Any takers on tackling those big questions?
Who's the first one again, sorry?
Trusting the sort of like the answers, the model, the output, hallucinations.
First of all, it does hallucinate, and so it's quite difficult to put it reliably into an automation. From a deeper architecture perspective, sometimes we set up orchestration layers, so we have a chatbot or an agentic AI that will say, I want you 7 models to go away, each with a different specialty, and I want you to come back and tell me your findings. And then at the top level, I'm going to interrogate that. At what point do we go and do this, and now I can check this, but you've helped to synthesize a lot of information and give me clarity. So does that answer some of your question? You can help to guard against it. And I go jump on to the second one as well, because I am a songwriter, I'm also a creator. I find it massively liberating to help me break down walls. So again, you can use different AI models that make sure that they're not copying. Humankind, us as a central thought, and take innovation and kind of what's the word? Inspiration. Inspiration from things that we see all the time. I mean, that's what marketing and selling is, and advertising is, right? And we are inspired by our favourite creators. So we automatically regurgitate that. No, it's not fair to go and take somebody's complete work. I think that's but I could accidentally write the same song as somebody else. We see the Ed Sheeran, and that happens all the time. I would encourage people to augment and to break down those kind of brain blocks and those kind of times where you drive for creativity and use it to spark it. It's my take on it.
I totally agree. I would just add to that. I think. Is it fair? No. Is it the reality? Yes. Is IP, is being unique going to be feasible in the world of generative AI? Probably not. And that's why I go back to now the winners will be those who own the attention. So I think the IP is actually in the distribution rather than the product. And I think how people think about building their distribution, building their channels, that's going to be the bit which is protectable, not actually what they're pushing through.
And also, if you're going to be creative, you need to be creative faster, you need to be creative. Your outputs, your workflow, how do you start and get something finished and across the line? That design, however you achieve that, is what's going to build success for you, whatever avenue that looks like.
Roei, connected here, you've got a stand, is that right?
Yes, yeah, we're just around the corner between Helpbank and HelloFresh.
Are you here for the 2 days?
And no, I'm here just for the rest of today. I'm doing a keynote speech at 2 on that stage.
And grabbed them for a coffee today. James, are you here for the 2 days?
I'm here for today, but you can find us on digitalplanning.tech. Anybody wants to talk to us.
Sadeeq?
I'm just here for a couple of hours.
All right, cool. Can I get a round of applause?
Thanks for watching this special episode from the Festival of Entrepreneurs. Our mission is simple: to help founders and business owners grow faster, think bigger, and take action. And if you were part of the event, thank you for joining us and being part of the community. And if you missed it, don't worry. We'll be back with even more ideas, inspiration, and opportunities to help you take your business to the next level. You can find out more and register for future events at festivalofentrepreneurs.co.uk.